Montserrat, oh Montserrat, sweet Montserrat, sweet Montserrat, my home, sweet home. I'm proud, I'm proud to be Montserrat, proud to be Montserrat. Sons and daughters of this land, our hearts are filled with devotion, a new dawn of hope on the horizon, a desire to cross around the earth. Oh, Montserrat, Uganda, we love you forever. I'm proud, proud to be Montserrat. I'm proud, I'm proud.
Well, welcome to another year of the Aliagana Festival of the Word, otherwise known as Litfest. And today, this is the annual Alphonse Arrow Castle lecture series. And it is my honor today to have two broadcasting legends sharing this discussion with me from Radio Montserrat. We have the general manager and longtime newscaster extraordinaire, Mr. Herman Sargeant. And of course, we have the morning man, Mr. Basil Chambers. And both men, their voices are iconic in Montserrat. Anyone who listens to Radio Montserrat knows them. Gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing this discussion with me today. How are you?
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Edwin. Thank you. I'm good.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, as you know, today we're going to be talking about Arrow. This is somebody that I think all of us are familiar with. Someone we interacted with on perhaps on different levels. I think you gentlemen would have known him a little better than I did, considering that you've been in Montserrat most of your lives. I'm here in Florida, although I did see him quite a bit because he came to Florida to do his shopping. And you know, he was a businessman. He's known as an entertainer, but he's really a businessman at his core. So I got to see him a lot. Before we start into the meat of the discussion, which is about Arrow's lyrics and how they were relevant to the times, I just wanted to invite both of you to just say something briefly about your recollections about Arrow. First of all, I can't believe it's been 10 years since we lost him. And just tell me briefly, is there a memory about him that stands out to you that you can recall? First, I'll go to Basil first.
Yeah, thank you, Edwin. His easy spirit, his kindness, his frankness, his love for Montserrat and its people. This is where Arrow always wanted to be. No matter the circumstance, Montserrat was his home. And wherever he went, he preached about Montserrat. He spoke Montserrat. He was Montserrat.
Definitely.
Right. For me, I think his professionalism, to whether it is his music or his business, and very dependable person. From a business perspective, I could have called him at short notice to make an order for something. And in a matter of days, you'd have it at your doorstep or at my doorstep. And that is something I remember him for tremendously. Regarding his music, well, his performances, of course, at Church Park, because I've never seen him perform overseas. But my lasting memory of him is on that stage at Church Park, creating havoc.
Yes, I think that was 2007.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Well, one little memory I wanted to share is that in 1994, he came to Miami to perform at a club on Miami Beach. It was actually a Spanish club, and when he arrived, what he did was rounded up all the Montserratans here that he could find, and we arrived at the club. I think it was about 20 something of us, and we arrived at the back of the club, And the promoter opened the door and said to Aaron, who are all these people? And he said, they're all with me. So all of us got in free. In the Spanish club, we were the only black people there. It was one of the most surreal experiences. But that was Arrow. And he made sure that the promoter treated all of us great. We all got complimentary drinks. It was just unbelievable. You know, that was just his generosity. So anyway, I would like to get into the discussion now about the lyrics. And, you know, I've done a little research. As you both know, I'm always researching, and I'm sort of a book nerd. I'm always researching about history and festival. And in 1967, 67 was the first year that Arrow entered the Calypso competition. And he had a song called Coops to Coops. I don't know if you gentlemen are familiar with it. But
no.
That was a popular song that year. And basically the song where he was talking about the fact that Calypsonians get no respect and the Queen show contestants get all the honors. So Coops to Coops literally is the sound that someone makes when they're wearing high heels, you know, walking around. So I wanted to read you a couple lines from that song. It says, when them Queen contestants go on stage, it's only Coops to Coops. We, talking about the Californians, we singing for the chief and crown. All them queens do is pose, and yet we bust we brain to compose. And when we done sing, you don't get a thing. So he's talking about the fact that, because in the 60s, in the first few years of the Calypso show was basically a sideshow. The Queen show was the main attraction. And Calypsonians got next to nothing in those days. I remember speaking to, I think it was the Mighty Hero, said the first year he won, he got about $15. You know? Some of the other contestants were lucky they got maybe a bottle of liquor or something like that, or maybe a shirt, you know, or something. So Arrow was the one who really put his foot down and said, no. You have to start treating us better. And then he actually led a boycott. And so that brought about change. So he was a pioneer in different ways. He brought about that change that helped the Calypsonians start earning a little more money when the festival resumed in 1972. Yeah, any thoughts about Arrow and his impact in that way that you could remember, as far as, you know, bringing about change? Anything that you could recall?
Well, not immediately, but I can understand where you're coming from when you are talking about bringing about change, because that's who he was. He was the ultimate professional, always wanted to be the best. And if he's putting his best out, of course, he wants to be properly recognized. And so getting the proper respect for Anatolian from the committee and for all others was very, very important to him. And being him at a very young age then, and perhaps the youngest of the lot participating.
He was.
Right. It shows a lot about his leadership, that he was able to lead these older men and to get what justly deserved for them.
Absolutely. Basil, I think you would agree that Arrow was a person who totally refused to get second-class treatment.
Well,
I mean,
yeah, I'd agree with that. And speaking about Calypsonians who were maybe left on the back burner back in the day, that used to be the case. I remember King Shortshirt from Antigua doing a song called "Remember We Are the Ones." The Calypsonians, we are the ones who make you rock and prance and jump up, and we bring the real creativity. Meanwhile, the Queen Show girls, they just come, do their thing, blah, blah, blah. And that was Arrow. He would preach that cause to make it better. So I'm not surprised that at his earlier age, or in the earlier days, that he was a voice for change. That was Arrow.
And Edwin, if I can just interject here, you remember back in the 60s, it might sound a bit controversial, but it was a class thing. You know, you have all these beautiful, wonderful ladies who were from perhaps the upper class at that time, participating in the Queen Show and getting all these fabulous prizes. Remember, the Calypsonian was the man on the street, in the bars, around the bars on the street corner. And so they were not treated with the same respect as the Queen contestants and so on. So it was more than just asking for the proper prizes to be given. It was about asking to be equal with the queens as well. So that too, in my mind, was very significant.
Absolutely. And if I would add a little item, I heard that at that show in 1967, that Arrow arrived with his own band. You know, everybody else was using the normal band, and Arrow arrived with his own band. So it shows you at that young age what kind of person he was. Because I always say that Arrow, of course, he was a wonderful entertainer, but I just think at his core, he was a businessman. You know, I think he was a businessman, and that was his number one profession, if I must say so.
Yeah, but Edwin, remember, and it has changed over time as well, where people are realizing the weight of a Calypsonian. The Calypsonian's job is to speak about the ills of the nation, speak about when politicians are not taking care of their people as they had promised during election, you know. So the Calypsonian migrated or moved on from just being the man in the bar, the man on the streets, to being the voice of the people. Arrow recognized that early and decided, let me get into this system of creating a sort of pathway for the ordinary man on the street, the voter who has no voice after election.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you said that, Basil, because that's going to segue into another song, one of his early songs I wanted to talk about, which is Hold On to Your Property. And this is a very important song. I think it was actually written by Lawyer Allen, Kenneth Allen QC. And I spoke to Lawyer Allen, and he told me how that song came about was Arrow's older brother, Kenny Castle, and Lawyer Allen were very good friends. As a matter of fact, they were part of the JCs that started the first festival in 1962. And so Lawyer Allen told me that Kenny Castle came to him one day and said, listen, my youngest brother is trying to get into Calypso and he needs some songs. And so Lawyer Allen wrote that song, Hold On to Your Property. And it's a I think it's a very, very important song. And I think part of the lyrics is, a new day is dawning, I am warning you, my friend, hold on to your property and will it to your children. And because in the 60s and early 70s, all those areas such as Richmond Hill and Old Town and Isles Bay and these places were starting to be developed. And you saw all these expatriates coming back and everything. And so I think it was a very, very important song for the times. So, you know, gentlemen, you have any thoughts on that?
I want to share something with you, Edwin and Herman. Now, there's a lady, she passed now, I think last year. She lived in Drummond's. And I would play that song by Arrow, Hold On to Your Property. And every time I play that song on the radio, she'd call me. And she'd tell me, Basil, don't play that song. That's a stupid song. So I asked her why. And she said to me, why should I will what I have for my children when my children don't want to take care of me in my old age? They don't want to come up for me. They put me up in a home. They don't want to see me. Right? Mm-hmm. Leave what you have for the people who take care of you in your old age. I could never forget it. So this old lady thinks that Hold On to Your Property and Will It to Your Children was not a good song and not a good idea.
Wow. Well, to me, it is or was one of the most political songs, one of the best political songs to have come out of Montserrat. And I am enlightened by the fact that you said that Sir Kenneth Allen, call him Sir, wrote that song. Because at that time, Edwin and Basil, if you remember, and as Edwin alluded to a while ago, a lot of Canadians, Americans, Europeans were moving into Montserrat, looking to purchase land and build. So this was creating a sort of a tension at the time because the Montserratians felt disenfranchised, that they would lose out in this thing because all these people are coming in to take up their property, to purchase their property, all the seaside property and so on that these expatriates love. And so he felt right that he should speak about those issues in the song. But that song not only applied to Montserrat, it applied to most of the Caribbean islands, because the same thing was happening in St. Kitts, Antigua, and wherever. And when he goes overseas to perform in these islands, and he performed that particular song, he got tremendous applause, because the people in St. Kitts or wherever he went to perform, they can't identify with what he is saying, the message that he is portraying. So it was a very powerful political statement, I believe, at the time, and still relevant up to today.
Absolutely. And anyone, all of these islands that were coming out of British colonialism can relate to that. Like you said, it wasn't just a Montserrat song. Anybody in the region can relate to that. I'm sorry, Basil, you want to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, because I was saying now, that is the correct story, what Herman is saying. But it's amazing how people can still interpret something else out of that song. For example, what I told you about the old lady, right?
Right.
He was not thinking about, the foreign man coming in or the white man coming in and trying to steal or get your lands by the beach. She didn't see the song that way. She saw it as giving up her property to her children or the people who are not taking care of her. And she's saying, no. I am going to give what I have to the people who take care of me in my old age. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Did you ever explain the true premise of it, Basil, to her?
Well, she's older than I am, and I would have thought that she would have known, the real meaning of the song. But I think that even if I tried to sell that, if I tried to sell that to her, she would still have in her mind, it's about me and my children and my family, and I don't understand what I was saying.
I sound like she's stuck in her ways. Arrow, I don't know how Arrow really stood politically when it came to politics. But I know that there was one particular song where he definitely showed a political bent, and it was a song, I think in 1970, I think it might have been on his very first album. It was a song called PDP. Now, we're coming up on 50 years in about a month. I think actually later this month is going to be the 50th anniversary of the 1970 elections where Austin Bramble actually defeated his father. Now, that was a very, very, very volatile, controversial election, because Austin Bramble basically ended the career of his father, W.H. Bramble. And Arrow had a song called PDP, and the lyrics, which I have a little excerpt, was, "Willie Boom Boom, you did your best. Now it's time to take a rest. Make way for the powerhouse party." And Austin Bramble's party actually swept his father's party and sent him into retirement. And from what I understand, I don't think he and his father ever truly mended fences after that. So Arrow did show some sort of a political bias, if you will, with that song. I don't know if you gentlemen can recall any other incident besides that where Arrow showed some sort of political favoritism? You?
Well, actually, I don't know. Go ahead, Basil.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't really recall. I've spent a lot of time with Arrow, and I was very close to the Castle family at one time, so very connected with Arrow. And I really can't recall Arrow getting into politics, speaking about politics or politicians, even his music, maybe that was one of the one-offs where he mentioned a political party. But Arrow was more into the international market, selling his music to the world, promoting Montserrat. I don't think that he was politically inclined. He was very private when it came to politics. So, in all honesty, I can't say much about his political ambitions or who he was voting for or rooting for.
I agree with Basil. You really couldn't tell, apart from that one obvious song, the PDP, and it appears from that song that he was all in with the PDP, with Austin Bramble and his crew, right? But that was early Arrow. That was 1970. He was still very young, and so forth. And so yeah, that was probably the only time that he really showed any political favoritism. But I think going forward after that, none of his songs ever indicated who he was supporting. And that to me was important in a sense, because politics in Montserrat, as you say, in that period was very divisive. You have the people who would brand Austin as the communists, and then you have the free market people and so on. And divisive, not in a way that we see it in Jamaica or even in St. Kitts or Antigua, but the divisive in terms of clashing ideologies that was going on at the time in Montserrat in the 1970s. So I don't think Arrow really wanted any part of that. He wanted to rise above that and send. He would send political messages, mind you, but he did not come out basically after that song to declare his hand, as you say, as to who he was supporting.
Right. Yes, yes, Basil.
Remember, we've got a song in the system called Lead, where Arrow's actually saying somebody's hungry for power, right? And now you get the power, you better lead, you got to lead. It's right in the system. I don't remember the name of it, but that's another political song that he did, called Lead.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed, Basil. I think I recall that song. And that goes basically right into what I was suggesting, that he wanted to rise above the fray in terms of choosing sides. And he was taking a position of leadership, to me, with that song, where he's appealing to our leaders, to get beyond the petty party politics and do the right thing to the country by leading the country properly.
Yes, I remember he did have a song too called Politician's Prayer, where he basically, it was sort of a whimsical, funny song where he's talking about how politicians beg for your vote and different things like that. But that one did not show any bias. And I do agree with you, because like I said, Arrow was a businessman, and I think he would have tried later on, like you said, he was very young when he did that song PDP. I think he would have tried later on to be as unbiased as possible, because he doesn't want to alienate any of his audience. He's a businessman, So
Absolutely.
Obviously he wouldn't want to do that. Two other songs from the early 70s I wanted to talk about real briefly is Gene Under the Bed. That song was written by Kenneth Allen QC as well. And it was a song about, these people who went to the Virgin Islands and ended up having to hide from immigration. That was a true story. I've heard stories about that from the 70s. And the other song that I wanted to talk about is Montserrat English, 1974. He won the crown with that song. And that was the song where he basically talked about the different little cultural phrases that we use in Montserrat. Gimme liwaya yet day, and, tekum up, hanum gimme. Guys, and this song was really, really humorous. Tell me a little bit about the impact of that song, Montserrat English, where I think he's trying to instill this cultural pride.
Yes. One of the best social commentaries ever written. Simple, right? The message is very simple, right? And what Arrow was asking for in that song is for us to show pride in who we are. We are who we are, okay? We can't run away from who we are. And our language, which at the time, and maybe perhaps even now, okay, is being looked upon as a second-class language. It didn't get the respect it deserves. And some people have done some work in terms of promoting the Montserrat language and so on. But remember, in those days, speaking bad English, as they said, was frowned upon. It wasn't the correct thing to do. Okay, you were taught the Queen's English, and you were supposed to speak the Queen English at all times. But Arrow is saying, but wait, this is who we are. This is our language. You know, where's the respect for that? You know, and so it's part of the Montserrat culture, and it shows a sign or a side of him that perhaps some people did not recognize at the time. That Arrow was a patriot, and he believed in Montserrat and Montserratians and our history and culture, and so he wanted to promote that. And to put, and one of the easiest way to do that is through language.
Absolutely.
You know, I believe that this song that Arrow wrote was not for the Montserratians who lived here. It's for the Montserratians who migrated and lived in other places of the world. A Bajan is a Bajan wherever they go. A Jamaican remains a Jamaican, no matter where they are in the world. They don't lose it. An Antiguan, their accent remains, their style, their lingo. It stays with them. Montserratians always had a way of, as soon as they get out of Montserrat, they become somebody else. And Arrow was trying to preach to those living outside of Montserrat. Don't forget where you come from. And this is how we speak. You understand? Let us tell the world, this is our language. Let us be proud of it forever. Let us remain Montserratians. It's a brilliant piece. Brilliant piece by Arrow.
Excellent.
Absolutely. And as we know, that language is one of the most specific sorts of our cultural identity. And like you said, this is Montserrat culture. We'll be proud of it forever. You know? Any thought before we move on? Any thoughts briefly about Gene under the bed? I'm sure you guys have heard stories about people running from immigration and different things.
I can tell you, I knew about that story a long time ago. And I think that I asked Arrow, and he was explaining to me that they were down in the Virgin Islands. And some sort of issue happened, and people had to be hiding, and blah, 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 you know. And he came up with this song, Gene Under the Bed, you know. So I do know a little bit about it. And as you recollected in the part, it has a Virgin Islands history tagged to it.
Yeah.
Indeed. And did you ever find out who Gene was, Edwin?
No. But you know, listen, my mom lived in the Virgin Islands for many years, and she told me that in the early 70s when she went down there, that the immigration, like you would come into visit and they'd give you about 3 months. And if you overstayed, it's not like some countries where it's so big where, you know, they don't even, you know, it's hard to find you. They would go out and look for you. And I've heard stories about men hiding in refrigerators. Seriously, these things happen. And people were hiding.
But Edwin,
yeah.
Edwin, it still happens now. The Virgin Islands, they don't play. They don't play. If you're coming for 1 week, it's 1 week, and then you have to be out. They don't play when it comes to immigration and their laws and stuff like that. So nothing new there.
And I think that song also spoke about the economic climate that was going on at the time. You remember now that these people were going over there to better themselves, to find work and so on, right? So they were willing to take the risk, all right? And because the families back here in Montserrat, they were depending on them.
Yes. There's a great line in that song that I love, and it goes, "Immigration have a new slogan. We are keeping the virgins clean." It's a really wonderful written song and that's by Basil. And again, I mean, wonderful writing.
But I like Edwin. I like the part that says,
yes.
I like the part that says, "Tell your mother, don't worry. The Lord will look out for me or provide for me." You remember that little part?
Yes.
Tell your mother, don't worry.
Yes.
The Lord will provide.
Yep.
Yeah, man.
Like I said, I want to come back as sharp as attack with jewels
Yes.
adorned in me.
Looking good,
Yours
looking good.
love and you can say it's from Gene Under the
Yeah.
Bed. I mean,
Gene Under the Bed.
wonderfully written song. I tell you, as a songwriter myself, there's certain songs where I said to myself, why didn't I think of that? You know, you kind of almost feel jealous that you didn't come up with that idea. So it's a really wonderful song. Another song later on that I think you guys are familiar with, Stranger's Paradise.
And you know, some people still.
Is Montserrat a Stranger's Paradise?
Yeah, but you know that there's still that feeling today, and maybe even more so today than before, that Montserrat has become a stranger's paradise. When you look at the ratio of Montserratians to non-nationals, for example, it's frightening. It's frightening.
Right.
And that song for its time. So I was thinking, listen, this is what might happen. And it's true. Montserrat has become stranger's paradise.
Yes. Herman, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, Montserrat is still a stranger's paradise, as Basil says. That is a fact, and that song has so many meanings. Okay, and one of them is that we are so open and warm and friendly. I think that's one of the things I take from that song. There are other more not so flattering interpretations as well. But what I would like to take from that is that we are very open, warm, and generous people. And I believe Arrow was in that song celebrating that fact as well.
Yes, I think there was a part of that song where he said there was a young lady he was trying to talk to, and he couldn't get anywhere, and soon, somebody arrived from another island, and he got the girl immediately, or something like that. So these are things that have been talked about over the years where, yeah, when people come into Montserrat, it seems like they get VIP treatment, as opposed to people who live here. And I think there is some truth to that still.
Indeed.
Definitely. So I want to move on a little bit now. I mean, and this is the thing, that Arrow always will go down as a great entertainer of soca and party songs, of course. Everybody knows Hot, Hot, Hot and all the other songs. But as we're discussing now, he really gave some important social commentary, especially early in his career. And that were very, very relevant. And that were very, very, that were long lasting. Another song, late in the late 70s, his 1979 album had a couple of important songs, I think. Grudge and Advantage Never Done. And as DJs, you both would have played those songs, I would think, over the years many times. Let's start out with Grudge. Basil, what do you think about that song? When you hear that song, what do you think about?
You know that that word grudge and bad mind seems to have become a part of the Montserrat fabric, especially of late. Over the past 10 years, you hear it.
Yeah.
Other Calypsonians have written about bad mind and grudge. It is something that has been in our bones and in our fabric and in our system for some years. We just seem not to be able to get rid of grudge. I don't know why. And it's a pity, it's a shame that we can't maybe produce a song that talks about love. Once we're doing a Calypso song, especially in this time, this era, grudge must be involved. There's a lot of hurt, not only in Montserrat, throughout the world. And if somebody does you wrong, the first thing you want to say to them is, you grudge me. You're bad-minded. You don't want to see me get better, or you don't want me to have what you have. So grudge has been around for a long time. It is something that I really would like to see us get out of our system. But Arrow, I think, recognized that a long time ago. Arrow would give you stories about how he used to be treated. Even when he had shows at Church Park, it's there. It's sad, but it's right there.
Yeah. Yes, Herman, any thoughts?
With what Basil is saying, it's part of life. It is a fact of life that we have people in the community who are jealous of others for what they have and so on. That I don't think that is ever going to stop. It's part of who we are. Not only Monstratans, but people wherever you go. But Arrow was able to put that in a song using simple lines, but the message was there. It was a powerful song to remind people that, hey, we need to support each other. We can't have this crab in a barrel attitude where we try to tear people down when we see them succeeding. And so I remember Basil used to play that song almost every morning. Basil, you need to get back to that song again, right? You used to play it so often, and I used to enjoy you hearing you play that song in the morning on the morning show. I think that message is still important and is a message that we still should be listening to today.
But listen, guys, you wouldn't believe if I play that song, right? My telephone would go crazy, and people say, "Who trouble you? What wrong now?" That is no. That's how the listening public is. If you play a song, if I'm going to go and play Bad Mind, somebody's going to call. Who trouble you? What I do you? Tell me. You know, that's how the people are.
Yes. I think I mentioned that song, Advantage Never Done. I think it's along the same lines with the same theme where you're talking about people, mistreating people and different things for whatever reason. The other song, actually, he did this song in 78, so the year before, Man Must Live. One of his most popular songs, Man Must Live. Oppressed man, man must live. Torture man, man must live. It's all about the human experience and overcoming adversity. I think is one of his most poignant and very impactful songs. You guys agree with that?
Absolutely. Perhaps the most.
Right there, man.
Yeah, I mean, you said it perfectly, Edwin. It is social commentary, but with a sweet beat. Okay, yeah. And you can dance to that in a disco. Well, back in the day, maybe not today, but you can. But the lyrics is right there. The music is sweet. It's a nice beat and whatever. But the lyrics is there, so powerful about man is able to overcome all these issues, all these problems. All these personal problems, all these struggles, and so on. And what Arrow is saying is that, listen, you can overcome those problems. There's light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to try harder, keep striving, and a better day is going to come. So persons who are down and out, who are having real issues, are really having real problems in their life, maybe losing their jobs, maybe a loved one passed away or something. The business might be struggling. You can't keep your head above water. But when you listen to that song, right, it gives you hope because it tells you that man can survive anything. Okay, right. And so it's one of the best social commentaries I've heard, and I've heard quite a lot. That song is just wonderful.
Yes. Basil, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, that's a classic. That's a classic, and I believe that even there's a group there in London now, Herman, the Aliogwana Singers. They just did a revised version of that song by Arrow. You understand? It's a huge song. This is easily one of Arrow's biggest songs. And it's also sending the message that when God blesses you, nobody can take away that blessing. When there is something for you, nobody can stop that blessing. Who God bless, no man curse. So you can kill me, you can try to persecute me. If I am blessed and unstoppable, you can't trouble me. That is what I get out of that song. You understand? Mm-hmm. It's a huge song. Huge song.
Yeah. And I think the message he's sending is once there's life, there's hope. Exactly. You could be broke. You could be, you could not have a penny in your pocket, but once you have life, you can start over. Oppressed man, whatever.
Yeah. And you just to interject, Edwin, at the time when he wrote that song, when he performed that song, he was moving into the soca genre. Okay. Yes. So he was still able to put across a social commentary using that soca beat. And I think that's the time when he was moving from the strictly calypso sort of setting into the soca field.
Absolutely. That was the time he was making that transition. And as we leave the 70s and we go into the yes, Basil, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback on what Herman was just saying about getting out from the calypso into the soca, because if you remember as well, Short Shirt and Mighty Swallow, may soul continue to rest in peace. They too had this sort of driving music with full lyrical content. So it was an era of changing from not just this slow lyrical calypso into an upbeat soca track with the same lyrics.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You can have a social commentary and get your message across with a dance beat as well. Absolutely.
Exactly.
And you know what? The next song I thought about was Bills. Now, Bills is a jumpy song that you could dance to, but it's about something everyone can relate to. Is bills. We all have to pay bills. You know. I think that was in 1980. I want to sort of fast forward a little bit, because in the 80s and 90s now, I think you would agree, Arrow was mostly about dance music and soca music. And as we come into the 2000s, late 90s, 2000s, one song I must mention, and I tell you, I remember Arrow performing this song when they had the concert for Haiti at the Cultural Center. I Just Can't Run Away, which he did right after the volcano. I just can't. What a touching song. I just can't run away. And when he says, as long as they have goat water down there, I'll be holding on. I mean, what a touching song. Your thoughts?
But you see, again, I don't believe that a lot of people understood what Montserrat meant to Arrow. Montserrat is home, and Arrow could have gone any place in the world. He could have lived anywhere in the world, and no matter how bad Montserrat became, he wanted to be here with his people. Arrow always came back to Montserrat. This way his base was. This way his love was. I want to use that word because we used grudge a little while ago. Arrow loved Montserrat and showed that he loved Montserrat. He spoke about Montserrat. He sang about Montserrat. He lived on Montserrat. This way he wanted to be. Montserrat was Arrow.
I agree. I totally agree with Basil. And as I listen to him speak, I'm saying to myself, that song was about Arrow and about his love for this little country, Montserrat. The song appeals to those who left in the early part of the volcanic crisis, some of them with a little hope of possibly returning to Montserrat because they lost everything. But that song gave them some hope, because Arrow is telling them, well, listen, as long as you have breadfruit on the tree and stuff like that, then, you know, you have all these wonderful attributes that Montserrat possesses. As long as it's there, there's hope for you to come back. And for those of us who decide to stay, hey, you have a gem here still, you know? And so he was sending messages to two different groups of people: those who left and perhaps had given up at that point of ever coming back because they lost everything, and those of us who remained and who were struggling and finding it very, very hard to hold on because things were getting tighter and tighter and harder every day. And when you listen to that song, it gives you hope and say, boy, let me just stay on a little longer, because we have a treasure here that we should hold on to, you know?
Yes. And one thing about Arrow is that not only did he love Montserrat, you could tell that by his actions, because I remember I had been away for many, many, many years. And this was before the volcano. I came home one year and I was in the Arrow Man shop. I went to the Arrow Man shop in town at that time. And he remembered who I was. And he told me who my family was. In other words, I'm not going to say he knew everybody in Montserrat, but he really went out of his way to be as connected with his people as possible, you know? And so that is one thing I always remember about him. So as we wrap up, gentlemen, that concert I mentioned earlier about the one at the Cultural Center in 2010, this was when he was already ill. And I could remember that picture of him there performing, and he had on the hat, and he still had a wonderful smile, and he was singing for that benefit concert for Haiti. His resilience in the midst of illness, terminal illness, anything that stands. I remember Basil seeing a photo of you. I think you were with him on St. John's Day. I think it was. I'm not sure.
It was.
Just his attitude during that fight. Is there anything that stands out to both of you?
Herman, you want to go first for this one?
Yes, I would like to say that that final concert was a very sad occasion, because a lot of us at that point realized that this was perhaps the final time that we would see the great man on stage. And he perhaps knew that as well. And he really went all out to give us a magnificent performance, and for a good cause, because all the funds were being raised for Haiti, who suffered that catastrophic earthquake. But it was an occasion where you had many different types of emotions flowing through you, because you're happy, you're seeing Arrow on stage, you're feeling the joy to be there with him. At the same time, at the back of your mind, you're saying, wow, this might be the final time. And so that was, to me, the most difficult thing, being there at that concert and seeing him on stage.
Yeah. Boy, I knew how sick Arrow was. As I said to you, I was very close to Arrow, and in his latter days, we became really, really close. And I knew the pain that he was going through that night, but he just wanted to be there. He wanted to perform. He wanted to do something for Haiti, even though he was going through his own trials and his own pain and his own tribulations. That was Arrow. When Arrow was giving, he was going to give his all. That photo that you spoke about, Edwin, up St. John's, I actually went for him that day. I could never forget. And I said to him, let's go up St. John's, man. And I could remember the love that everybody gave Arrow. We were up St. John's. Everybody wanted a photo. People were just talking to him. And I believe that was one of his happiest days before he passed. But yeah.
Yes, it was really tough. Those last few, that last year of his life, and seeing that concert, it was really tough to watch. And you in your back of your mind, you almost sense that the end is coming, but even when it happens, it's very tough to accept. As we wrap up, gentlemen, it's been a really, really, really wonderful discussion, and I just want to wrap up and ask each one of you just to tell me briefly, what do you think is Arrow's legacy? Starting with you, Herman.
Well, listen, that has been a subject of discussion for a long time. Okay, I look at it two ways, from the business aspect. Okay, Arrow left something, a blueprint, I think, that sadly a lot of our business people here in Montserrat, they have not used it. Arrow showed clearly how to make a business run successfully. It took a lot of dedication and hard work and ambition. Okay, I'm not saying our present day businessmen don't have those, but I don't see them taking advantage of the path that Arrow actually made for them in becoming successful businessmen. I may get some criticism for making that remark, but that is the case, and that's how I feel. I can make the same argument for the music. Okay. How is it Arrow left a rich legacy in music, and it's there. He created a pathway, and that pathway still exists. The path is not closed, okay? And so it's there now for, again, a blueprint there for our artists. I think some of them really try, and I have to give kudos to them, okay? They need to study Arrow some more, okay? and talked to his friends, talked to Basil, talked to his family. Basil knew him very well, was very close to him, and so on. And I think he left something for us. When I went to the exhibition that they had for him down at the National Museum, and I see those photographs of him performing in Trinidad or in Jamaica or wherever in Europe and wherever. And I see these massive crowds who just gravitated towards him. Okay. I said, listen, we had a gem here, but I'm not sure if we actually recognized what we had. We still have it because we have his legacy. Okay. And it's for us to act on that and to make Montserrat better, because I believe that in his heart of heart, Arrow thought he made a difference. He did make a difference, and he made a very powerful impact on Montserrat from a business sense and from a music sense.
Wonderfully said. Basil?
Yeah, for me, Arrow's legacy is the way he sold Montserrat and sold himself. Arrow has left some huge boots to fill. And let us not be fooled. These boots will not be filled anytime soon. The market itself has grown bigger and wider. And there are people like Edwin Yearwood, Marshall Montano, who will tell you that they've learned, that they've learned so much because of Arrow. Arrow took the best musicians of his time to travel. He took them wherever he went. He was not into nothing mediocre. So when you go to an Arrow show, you're going to get the best of the best. Michael Jackson, Prince, none of them had nothing over Arrow. His stage presence, presentation, his dressing, his style was out of this world. So when you spoke about Arrow, you're speaking about somebody who was out there by himself. And Arrow show was something to die for. You had to pay to go and see. He didn't let down his guard. Even when he was performing here in Montserrat, he gave you a world-class performance. It's something that you would see Arrow do outside of Montserrat. So I'm saying, Arrow gave his best. The world knew Montserrat because of Arrow. Long before the volcano, awoke, people in Japan, Canada, Great Britain, America, they knew of Montserrat because of Arrow. Speaking about his business head, genius, brilliant. I've seen people come to Arrow's man shop. And remember, he used to have this sale, buy one, get one free. And I've seen parents come to Arrow that they don't have it. And Arrow would give them, go ahead. I remember businessmen in Antigua and St. Kitts used to come to Montserrat, buy Arrow stuff and take back to Antigua and St. Kitts and sell because of the quality of stuff that he used to sell. Arrow was way before his time. A genius, a legend. And I'm really hoping that Montserrat would do something, not only have his name or Right Honorable Alphonsus Arrow or Alphonsus Castle. Something needs to be done. Maybe a monument, maybe naming something after the great man, but something must be done in honor of Arrow.
I definitely agree. And I want to leave you guys with a quote, one of my favorite quotes. When Arrow passed away, I think he was only 60, which is a young man. And a quote by the famous artist Andy Warhol, who said, "Man was not put on this earth to live forever, but to create something that will." And Arrow has definitely created something that is everlasting. And I do agree with you, Basil. I think we need to really honor this man, whether it's a statue, whether it's something that's significant, something that is, that maybe when somebody arrives at our airport the first thing they see is a picture. We need something of relevance. Yes, Basil.
I'm putting this before we sign off. This is one of the major faults of Montserrat. We don't understand how to appreciate and show our people how much we appreciate them. We don't go overboard to give them their flowers while they're alive, and even in death. We don't really create that lasting impression on the world. You know, when people come into Montserrat, one of the first things they should see is something about Arrow.
Yep, exactly.
In our school system, there must be something that is taught about Arrow. On the street, there must be something that you see that reminds you of Arrow. Sadly, the Montserrat thinking is not that. And I'm hoping that it changes before time.
Yes, and I think, as you know, may know, I have been behind the scenes pushing, for instance, for proper honors for Jim Allen, who, you know, that's a different issue, is someone who's close to my heart. And it's the same thing. I think sometimes when you live in a small island and you see someone every day, they sort of lose their mystique. Because, you know, in writing my book on Jim Allen, I discovered that most of the people outside Montserrat are the ones who admire him most, not the ones inside Montserrat. So I think because Arrow, we saw him every day and everything like that, perhaps he lost a little bit of his mystique. Whereas when you talk about crowds in Europe and America and these places flocking towards him and everything. So I think that's probably one of the issues, is that familiarity, you know, with someone maybe causes them to lose their stardom in a way, I would think. But definitely, I think Arrow is deserving of any accolades we could give him. You know, I still miss him. I wasn't the closest to him, but I knew him well enough, and I still miss him. And I do think that if the government of Montserrat and the powers that be watch this, I think we need to do something and do it quick. Gentlemen, it has been a wonderful, wonderful discussion. I want to thank you very much. You two are two broadcasting icons who I truly admire and love to listen to on Radio Montserrat. I'm here in Florida, listening to Radio Montserrat every day, and I want to thank you very much. And it was a wonderful discussion, and I would like to invite the viewers to check back tomorrow as the Aliadana Festival continues, and enjoy some more discussion. So, gentlemen, thank you and enjoy your day.
Thank you. Enjoyable.